In March 1881, a bomb shattered the cobblestones of St. Petersburg. The group responsible for the blast called themselves Narodnaya Volya, the people's will. To understand modern populism, we have to look past the czar they killed and examine the intellectual movement that built the bomb. In the 1860s and 70s, urban intellectuals known as the Narodniks argued that Russia could leapfrog the industrial capitalist phase of history. They believed the traditional rural commune, the mir, was the natural foundation for an immediate socialist transition. In 1874, hundreds of these students disguised themselves in peasant clothing and traveled to the countryside in a campaign called Going to the People. It failed. The actual illiterate farmers were deeply loyal to the czar and treated the city-born radicals with suspicion. This historical failure established a pattern that persists today, a political movement built upon a fictionalized version of the people constructed by outsiders. Moving from the Russian countryside to modern political science, researchers now analyze this phenomenon through the ideational approach. This diagram shows how scholar Cass Mudd defines the movement. He calls it a thin-centered ideology, meaning it has a narrow core that easily attaches to larger belief systems, like socialism or nationalism. As the diagram splits, we see the strict moral binary that defines this worldview. Society is divided into two rigid groups, a large homogeneous block representing the pure people, and a smaller isolated block at the top representing the corrupt elite. The ideology demands that politics must be the direct expression of the general will of that pure group, intentionally bypassing complex institutional structures like courts or parliaments. Because this core is so thin, it acts like an adaptable parasite, capable of attaching itself to drastically different political hosts across the globe. This adaptability is visible in the 21st century's divergent paths. In Latin America, left-wing or inclusionary populism became the dominant force. Leaders here define the elite as wealthy corporations and imperialists, while the people are the economically exploited working majority. Contrast that with right-wing or exclusionary populism in Europe and the United States, where the definitions shift. These movements define the people through ethno-nationalism, identifying as the somewheres tied to the land. The elite become the anywheres, cosmopolitan politicians, academics, and journalists who are viewed as disconnected from national values. While their targets are different, leaders on both ends of the spectrum utilize the exact same rhetorical architecture to divide society and consolidate support. Moving from ideas to execution, scholar Kurt Wayland focuses on the strategic approach to populism. This perspective focuses on how charismatic leaders use emotional storytelling and calculated bad manners to purposefully bypass traditional institutions and claim a direct link to the masses. This strategy creates an intense academic debate over the health of democracy. Scholars like Jan Werner Müller classify populism as a democratic pathology. This illustrates the pathology argument. Claiming a monopoly on representing the people, populists treat opposition as illegitimate, dismantling the judiciary, legislature, and media. Contrast this with the remedy argument. Populism is a necessary corrective when established institutions become a barrier to ordinary citizens. The debate hinges on whether populism is a weapon that destroys liberal democracy or a messy life raft against an unresponsive oligarchy. The current populist zeitgeist is now global, spreading beyond the West and into the Asia-Pacific region. This resilience is fueled by legitimate material grievances, like stagnant wages and inequality, that established political systems have failed to solve. As the diagram shows, populists force a wedge between the two halves of liberal democracy, separating majority rule from the protections of the law. They embrace the democracy of majority rule, but actively attack the liberalism that protects minority rights and limits executive power. The idealized pure people, invented by the 19th century Narodniks, survives in the fervent crowds at today's political rallies. Populism is a mirror reflecting the structural failures of our political systems. Until liberal democracies reform themselves to reconnect with the masses, the seductive myth of the pure people will continue to threaten the system from within.